I have to admit, when I saw the stack of papers for today's deep dive, my first instinct was to brew a second pot of coffee.
Oh, no, wait a minute.
Government strategy documents are usually the cure for insomnia. You know, dense, bureaucratic, full of acronyms that only 5 people in the Pentagon understand.
Right.
But then I looked at the cover of this one, and I actually stopped cold. I thought, okay, did the printer glitch? Is this a prank?
It's a visual shock to the system, isn't
And
it?
it's jarring, because right there, front and center, under the eagle, it doesn't say Department of Defense.
Well,
It reads Department of War. And we aren't talking about a history book from 1945. This is the official, unclassified 2026 National Defense Strategy.
it's subtle as a sledgehammer. And I think that's the point.
But is it just branding? I mean, changing the letterhead is one thing, but does calling it the Department of War actually change how the building operates?
That is the million-dollar question, and this document answers it pretty aggressively. This isn't just aesthetic. The entire thesis of this strategy, and it's signed by Secretary Hegseth, is that the name change signals a fundamental operational reset.
For reset, how?
The argument they make is that for the last 80 years, by calling it defense, the U.S. military slowly morphed into a department of everything.
A department of everything.
Yeah, they argue it got bogged down in nation building, humanitarian aid, social engineering, basically trying to be a global Swiss Army knife.
And a Swiss Army knife isn't great if you really need a machete.
Exactly. The Secretary's memo explicitly says the military lost its warrior ethos.
It's warrior ethos.
Because it was too focused on what he calls cloud castle abstractions. Things like international stability or democracy promotion, rather than its core job.
Which, in their view, is
To fight and win wars. The document is brutally simple about this. They want to strip away the bureaucracy, the woke policies they mention, and return to a singular focus.
lethality.
Lethality. The goal isn't to police the world anymore. It's to be a force so terrifyingly efficient at violence that no one dares to provoke it.
It's a pivot from defense, which feels reactive, to war, which feels, well, it implies you're ready to start finishing things.
It creates a new baseline for deterrence. If your opponent sees a Department of Defense, they might push the envelope. If they see a Department of War, the calculus just changes.
It signals an end to what they call utopian idealism.
Yes, and a shift to what Hegseth calls hard-nosed realism.
Hard-nosed realism. That phrase does a lot of heavy lifting in this text. It sets up this whole narrative arc they use. Did you notice how they frame the timeline?
You mean the Golden Age narrative?
Yeah. It reads like a movie script.
It's a classic rhetorical device, right?
Yeah.
Darkness before the dawn. The source material paints this horrifying picture of January 2025, borders overrun, allies mooching.
Right. The world on the brink of World War III.
And then it contrasts that with a present day of the document in 2026, claiming that order has been restored because the U.S. got tough.
They're justifying the radical surgery they're performing by saying the patient was already dead on the table.
That's a good way to put it. And that surgery starts in a place I did not expect.
Me neither. Usually when we do these deep dives, we start with the nukes or China or Russia. This strategy starts with the Rio Grande.
That is line of effort 1. Defend the U.S. homeland. And historically, you're right, homeland defense meant missile defense grids or counterterrorism.
But in this NDS, the very first priority is the border. And they don't just call it a law enforcement issue.
No, they explicitly link it to national survival.
Border security is national security.
That's the mantra. And because it's now a military priority under the Department of War, the methods change. They detail something called Operation Southern Spear.
That sounded intense. It describes a full military mobilization at the border.
It completely blurs the line between police work and warfare. The document describes using the military to repel forms of invasion and assist in mass deportations.
But the key legal shift here, and this is what you really need to catch, is the designation of drug cartels.
Right, as foreign terrorist organizations, or FTOs.
Which is a game changer.
It's a total game changer. If a cartel is a criminal enterprise, you send the FBI. You read in their rights. If they're an FTO, they're enemy combatants.
You don't serve warrants, you serve kinetic strikes.
Exactly.
Oh.
So under this framework, a cartel lab in Mexico isn't a crime scene, it's a military target.
And that just flows directly into how this strategy views the entire Western Hemisphere.
This is where we run into the Trump Corollary.
I stopped on that page. The Monroe Doctrine is 200 years old. Europe, stay out of our hemisphere. The Trump Corollary seems to be saying something much more aggressive.
It's the Monroe Doctrine with teeth. The original was about preventing European colonization. The Corollary is about asserting American dominance.
No more ceding influence to China in our own backyard.
Not just that. It goes further. It implies that sovereignty in the Americas is conditional.
Conditional on what?
On competence. The argument is basically, if you can't control the threats in your country that are spilling over into ours, we will come in and control them for you.
That sounds a lot like imperialism with a modern coat of paint.
They would call it necessary self-defense. I mean, look at how they rename the geography. They identify key terrain to be secured. Panama Canal, Greenland, and
the Gulf of America.
The Gulf of America.
I had to reread that. They renamed the Gulf of Mexico.
In the strategic concept of this document, yes. They are claiming it as an American lake, implying total control. And to prove they aren't bluffing, the document references a future history scenario.
Operation Absolute Resolve.
Right.
I read that section. It played out like a techno-thriller. Direct military action against Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela.
It serves as a proof of concept for the reader. The text says Maduro thought he could poison Americans with impunity, likely the drug trade, and this operation taught him otherwise.
It's a warning shot.
It's a huge warning shot. The takeaway is that the Department of War doesn't ask for permission from the UN. If the neighborhood is messy, they cleaned it up.
So the logic flows. Secure the border, lock down the hemisphere. That creates a fortress America, but you can't just ignore the rest of the planet.
You have to look across the Pacific.
And obviously, the elephant in the room is China.
Right, but here's where there's some nuance. You'd expect a Department of War to be beating the war drums against Beijing.
Yeah.
But the header for line of effort 2 is deter China through strength, not confrontation.
Which seems contradictory. If we're being so aggressive in Venezuela, why the restraint with China?
Because the goal with China isn't to fix them. The document explicitly says the U.S. is not seeking regime change in Beijing.
They don't care about democratizing China.
Not at all. They just want a denial defense.
Okay, walk me through denial defense. How is that different from what we do now?
Think of it as a porcupine strategy. The goal is to fortify the first island chain, Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, so heavily that China physically cannot break out.
So you bottle them up.
Exactly. The document calls the Indo-Pacific the economic center of gravity for the world. If China controls those sea lanes, they control the U.S. economy. We don't need to conquer Beijing. We just need to keep them trapped in their own front yard.
It's containment 2.0. But to focus on China, you have to pull resources from somewhere else. And this is where the strategy takes a hard left turn on Russia.
This was the part that felt the most risky to me. For the last few years, Russia's been the urgent threat. This document barely gives them the time of day.
It's a massive strategic downgrade.
They classify Russia as a persistent but manageable threat.
Manageable. They have the largest nuclear arsenal on Earth. How do you manage that without sweating?
You manage it with math. The strategy points out a stark economic reality. The combined GDP of NATO's European members is roughly $26 trillion.
And Russia's is?
About $2 trillion.
So it's Europe. You are 10 times richer than the guy bullying you. Handle it yourself.
That is the verbatim logic. The text argues that the war in Ukraine must end, but the burden of long-term defense lies with Europe. The U.S. is effectively saying, we have bigger fish to fry in the Pacific.
We cannot care more about your security than you do.
That's the line. But that's the gamble. The Department of War argues they have no choice because of what they call the simultaneity problem.
That sounds like a headache.
It's a strategic nightmare. It's the realization that the U.S. cannot fight 3 major wars at once: Europe, the Middle East, and Asia.
The math just doesn't work anymore.
We don't have the chips, we don't have the ammo, and we definitely don't have the money to do it alone.
So if we can't do it alone, we need allies. But the old deal, where we pay for everything and they send a few guys to help, that's dead.
Dead and buried. And this brings us to the most controversial number in the entire document. We spent a decade arguing about the 2% of GDP rule.
The strategy just shreds that.
It shreds it. They mention the Hague Summit, where the president sets a new global standard, not 2%.
The new target is 5% of GDP.
5%.
That is astronomical. That's not peacetime budget money. That is selling the family silver to buy bullets money.
It's a wartime economy number. For context, even at the height of the Cold War, that was a heavy lift, asking modern European welfare states to hit 5%.
It would require dismantling their social safety nets.
And the document is presented as a binary choice. It's broken down: 3.5% on core military, 1.5% on security-related infrastructure. But the message is, no more subsidies.
So what happens to the countries that say, sorry, we literally can't afford that?
Then you get a tiered alliance system. The document talks about model allies. If you pay the 5%, you get the gold subscription nuclear umbrella, top-tier intel.
Best weapons.
Right. And if you don't, the text says we will be honest and clear with them.
Which is just diplomatic speak for good luck with Russia.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It turns alliances from a brotherhood of values into a transactional service contract.
Speaking of model allies, the Middle East section gives us a clear picture of what the U.S. wants its friends to look like. Israel seems to be the template.
The Middle East strategy is all about delegation. The U.S. doesn't want to occupy land there anymore. We want to smash the big threats and leave the maintenance to the locals.
And this is where we see Operation Midnight Hammer.
Yeah, that one sounded like the finale of a summer blockbuster.
It's the most aggressive future history scenario in the text.
It describes a massive U.S. strike that obliterated, that's their word, Iran's nuclear program. But here's the key operational detail. The strike came directly from the U.S. homeland.
Meaning we didn't fly out of bases in Qatar or Saudi Arabia.
Exactly. It implies long-range stealth bombers or hypersonic weapons launched from American soil. It signals to the world, we don't need to be in your region to destroy you.
That fits the Fortress America vibe perfectly. We sit behind our walls, and if you cross a line, we reach out and touch you.
And then, once the nuclear threat is gone, you hand the keys to regional partners. The text references a 12-day war, where Israel, empowered by the U.S., achieves historic successes on its own.
And Operation Rough Rider against the Houthis?
Right. Degrade the capability, then leave the Abraham Accords partners to police the neighborhood. It's high-tech violence followed by strategic withdrawal.
Okay, so let's connect the dots here. We have a Department of War that strikes from home, seals the border, and demands 5% from allies. But to make any of this work, you need the hardware. You need a lot of stuff.
And that is line of effort 4, the industrial base. The strategy calls for supercharging the Defense Industrial Base, or DIB.
They use the term arsenal of democracy, which is a throwback to World War II.
But updated for the AI era. This isn't just about factories, it's about reshoring. They want to bring strategic supply chains back from China to places like Ohio and Pennsylvania.
And here is the genius of that 5% rule.
You see it.
If the allies are forced to spend 5% of their GDP,
The U.S. wants them spending it on American weapons. It's a closed loop. You force the allies to buy tickets to the show, and the U.S. runs the box office.
it rebuilds American manufacturing using European and Asian money. Defense policy becomes economic policy.
Pragmatic realism. It's a business model as much as a war plan.
Before we wrap up the stuff section, there was one piece of tech I need you to explain. Golden Dome sounds like something from a comic book.
It does, but it is listed as a top priority. Golden Dome for America.
We've always had missile defense. We have interceptors in Alaska, California. How is this different?
Scale and density. Current systems are designed to stop maybe 1 or 2 rogue missiles from North Korea. A Golden Dome implies a layered, comprehensive shield. Lasers, space-based sensors, interceptors covering the entire continent.
So a literal shield to defeat large missile barrages.
A literal shield. And it pairs with their stance on nuclear modernization. The text says the U.S. will never be subject to nuclear blackmail.
So you sharpen the sword, modernize the nukes, and you build an impenetrable shield so the enemy can't hit back.
It attempts to break the deadlock of mutually assured destruction.
Which is deeply destabilizing, isn't it? If one side has a shield, they might be more willing to use their sword.
That is the risk.
Yeah.
But the Department of War argues that vulnerability is what invites aggression. They want invulnerability.
So let's pull the lens back. We've got the name change, the Trump Corollary, the 5% demand, the Golden Dome. When you look at this document as a whole, what is the message being sent to the world?
The message is that the era of the indispensable nation is over. For 30 years, the U.S. acted as the global policeman because we felt a moral obligation to maintain the liberal international order.
And this document says,
We are done with moral obligations. We care about American interests.
it feels less like Team America, World Police, and more like don't tread on me with a $1 trillion budget.
Precisely. The strategy says, we will defend our borders with lethal force. We will crush specific threats like Iran if they cross us. But we will not subsidize the safety of Europe or Asia anymore.
If you want to be part of the American security architecture, you have to pay the entrance fee.
It's a purely transactional worldview.
But here's the thing that keeps nagging at me. This whole strategy relies on 2 massive bets. Bet number 1, that we can act unilaterally in South America without setting the whole continent on fire. And bet number 2, that the Allies will actually pay up.
That is the gamble of realism. The document assumes the Allies will pay the 5% because they have no choice. They are terrified of Russia and China.
Yeah.
But what if they don't?
Right. What if Germany or France looks at their budget and says, we literally can't do 5% without collapsing our government? If the U.S. follows through and walks away, doesn't NATO just die?
It might. And if NATO collapses because the rent was too high, does Russia stay manageable? If Japan can't hit the target, does deterrence in the Pacific hold?
Nature abhors a vacuum. If the U.S. pulls back behind the Golden Dome because our friends didn't pay the bill, someone else is going to fill that space.
Exactly. The Department of War is betting that American strength alone is enough to weather that storm. They're betting we can be secure even if the world around us is chaotic.
It's a bold document. Whether it leads to a new golden age or a global free-for-all, well, that's the history we're all about to live through.
And we'll be watching every move.
Thanks for diving deep with us into the 2026 National Defense Strategy. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll catch you on the next one.